Hi, folks. As many of you will know, we're broadcasting from Scotland. So England has now taken a different path, and inevitably the press conference that Nicola Sturgeon holds every day of the week, that was the thrust of the journalistic questions. What are you going to do? Because Boris has done something else. What did you think, Jimmy?
Well, again, I was signally unimpressed with the quality of questioning from our dear media colleagues. You're right, they're trying to create division. The media seem desperate to sow confusion and then complain about that confusion. You know, they create the mixed messages and then talk about people giving mixed messages. The questions are in and around the border and people working on the border. Whilst they're desperately important to the said the person who the question's about, they're not massively important to the entire community in Scotland. The biggest problem Scotland has is the Prime Minister of the UK last night didn't make clear that the changes that he was making to lockdown were English-only changes. He didn't point out that England is the one that wants to go at a different pace from the rest of the UK, and that lockstep, which all politicians were talking about last week, has now been broken by the English Prime Minister. I think
I would say I thought his delivery was actually very good.
Whose delivery?
I thought Boris Johnson's delivered that. When you think about the way he normally blubbers and splutters and wahos and waves his hands about.
Well, he'd somebody brushed his hair as well.
Well, I thought his delivery was excellent. It was just a shame the content was a load of crap. Because he contradicted himself within that one statement a couple of times.
Well, don't forget, but we were getting forecast before it was broadcast. It had actually been recorded on Thursday.
Aye, well, I mean, the gist of it is go back to work if you can basically keep your 2 meter distance, blah, 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 blah. Nothing's really changed. It's just letting you go to work instead of saying you can't go to work even if you can distance. I mean,
some of the like you say, the contradictions that he introduced. I mean, it was 10 minutes long, and he introduced contradictions to that, telling people that they could go to work as long as they could safely socially distance from their work colleagues, but they couldn't go and visit their family, even though they could absolutely safely socially distance themselves from their family members.
No, you could look through the window.
Aye, it was madness. And then you get Dominic Raab coming out this morning and contradicting the Prime Minister. I'm assuming that Dominic Raab is one of the hawks who desperately want lockdown just thrown away now. But for them to endanger public safety to try and sort out a bloody fight between the cabinet about who's most right-wing, and it's farcical, it's ludicrous, mate. It's going to cost lives.
Sorry, Stuart.
Coming back to the mixed messaging, I don't think people realise we live in Scotland. We've had a different health service, a different education service at least since the end of World War II. Different laws since 1707.
No, all the differences have been there for hundreds of years.
The idea that we can't handle mixed messaging is absolutely crazy. Every 6 o'clock news, BBC News from London, spews out what's happening in the schools, what's happening at this rotten hospital in Leicester, da. We sit here in Scotland, we are used to mixed messaging.
I mean, she made a point right in her opening statement. You know, she does her bit at the beginning that tells you what new things are introducing and what's been going on. And she pulled the press.
Oh, yeah.
She said to the press, look, it's as much your job as my job, because you report what I say. It's your job to ensure there isn't mixed messages. Your big problem for the press is there's mixed messages coming out of Downing Street.
But there's also nobody, well,
no.
She mentioned it as well. This question of if you were in Germany, or if you're in Italy, if you were in the USA, there's a weird obsession that everything's got to be run from London in this country.
Well, that's the other thing. No newspaper has pointed out that the only country that's deviating is England.
Mhm.
They've
Aye.
gone off message. Ireland, Wales, Scotland are sticking on the same messages, stay at home. It's
Aye, exactly.
England that's deviating.
And Norrie, we've
Because
also
they're the
had,
biggest country, they're allowed to deviate without criticism.
but we've also had their agent provocateur, those people who are employed by an English political party to destabilise Scotland. We've had them coming out this morning. Absolutely volte-face, turn around from the position they were taking last week that Scotland had to act in lockstep with England. They just they have no recognition that England is now acting alone. But they're coming out and demanding, for example, that the Scottish government produce evidence to say why they are acting in the way that they are. Well, I'm sorry, they produce it every bloody day when they tell you what the R number is, when they tell you how many new cases there are. What is it about the fact that people are dying that Jackson Carlaw and Alistair Jack choose now to disregard?
But it also, of course, nothing's changed in Scotland. It's not up to Scotland to explain why things have changed. It's up to the authorities in England to explain themselves.
That's the real point. And I think one of the, if you're an independista, one of the benefits that's going to come out of this is that'll filter through. People will be saying, wait a minute, Scotland didn't do anything to make this messier. Didn't he do anything to mix the messages? This was Boris Johnson from number 10. He's the one that's changed. Where's his proof that now's the time to open up?
Oh, Norrie, I'm so in agreement with you.
You know?
I've watched this for the last week. Like yourself, Jimmy, noticing what the Tory MPs have been up to, even up to yesterday, using Twitter to attack devolution in Scotland. But the more they attack devolution at this moment, the more they attack it, the more they're actually driving a wedge between the ordinary people of Scotland who haven't yet thought about voting for independence and themselves.
Well, I'll tell you, if it turns out that they've opened up too quickly in England. Now that's my other bugbear with this. I don't believe for a minute that this is actually based on science. I think England, well, the British government, Boris Johnson, just needs people back to work, that he's under pressure from party donors, etc., etc., and that this is an intentional muddying of the waters so that people will go back to work.
Well, I mean,
and the government doesn't have to take responsibility.
Well, that's the other thing. I forget who it was, but for some very senior commentators in England have been saying just that. This is them shifting the responsibility for this disaster away from the government onto the people.
Yeah, because when you mix the messages up, you get to pick what message you claim was the real message.
Yeah, well, there was a couple of interesting things last night. Boris introduced quite cleverly, in my opinion, and he just slipped it in there, and not a lot of people necessarily noticed or picked up on it. But he introduced the idea that the best worst case scenario is 500,000 people dying in this country.
Yeah.
That 500,000 was doubling what had been the best worst case scenario. We were talking about 250,000. For him to double that just neatly moves the goalpost so that he can claim when 100,000 people die that, it could have been a lot worse.
Well, that adds on to the argument that the herd immunity policy is actually still officially we're not being told about it, but that's actually what they're still pursuing.
I think they've got to the point where it's going to be too hard, in their terms, on the economy to continue lockdown. So they've gone back to herd immunity. I genuinely believe that's it. And to say it isn't political is absolute nonsense.
The worrying thing about that, Norrie, even if it is true, the worrying thing about even thinking about pursuing a herd immunity strategy is that there are nowhere near enough people infected at the moment in any country on the planet to get anywhere close to herd immunity. How many people will actually have to die for herd immunity to have kicked in and be worthwhile in this country? You're probably talking about that 500,000 that Boris brought last night.
My understanding is that best case scenario, you need 60% of the population to have been infected.
So
Worst
how does
case scenario is 80%.
Yesterday morning, before we had the Boris Johnson fuckface show, sorry, I couldn't resist swearing today. There was that very interesting statistician back on again that Boris Johnson had misreported, used what he'd said as an excuse for whatever lie he was telling earlier in the week. He was saying that if you wanted to work out, for example, how many people have probably already got the virus, you can work it out. There's roughly, at the moment, it could be 50,000 people have died of the virus at the moment. And if it's 1% the death rate of the population, that makes it, what, 500,000?
Would you actually like to hear what he said?
Yeah.
Okay, give us a second.
Splendid.
This is good.
They're now very familiar with these daily press briefings. How well are they working, do you think?
Well, I watched yesterday's, and frankly, I found it completely embarrassing. We get told lots of big numbers, imprecise numbers of tests being done, 96,878. Well, that's not how many were done yesterday. That includes people that were posted out, tests that were posted out. We're told 31,587 people have died. No, they haven't. It's far more than that. So I think this is, actually not trustworthy communication of statistics. And it's such a missed opportunity. There's the public out there who are broadly very supportive of the measures. They're hungry for details, for facts, for genuine information, and yet they get fed this, what I call number theatre, which seems to be coordinated really much more by a number 10 communications team rather than genuinely trying to inform people about what's going on. I just wish that the data was being brought together and presented by people who really knew its strengths and limitations and could treat the audience with some respect.
David Spiegelhalter.
Yes, he's a very good communicator as well. Very persuasive.
It's got some name. I'm really impressed with his name, I have to say.
Bill, it's quite right. You need to treat the public as adults. And I worry about Boris Johnson. He's not an adult himself. He's never accepted responsibility for anything he's ever done in his life. So how we can expect him to take any kind of responsibility to lead a nation, I have no idea. I have no idea how people voted for him in their droves a few months back. Well, look at it. Well, he said yesterday that this pandemic has come at colossal cost, and then he redefined that by saying to our way of life. What he really meant is it's come at colossal cost to his friends, his billionaire hedge fund friends, who contribute to the party and have contributed to him becoming prime minister. And that's the one thing he's worried about, is the cost to those around him.
The other thing I noticed in it last night was he talked about this quarantining of people coming into the country for 14 days. Well, the first thing is he didn't give a date for it. So I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be talked about and then never happen.
Yeah, I think you could be right.
I think they're just going to keep pushing it back and back and back. Because the argument is that as our rate of infection goes down, it becomes important to stop infection coming into the country. Well, after what he's done, I can't see our rate of infection getting down low enough to make it worth their while. And then this morning, we're going to quarantine everybody except the French. Nigel Farage must be having kittens.
You're bang on, mate. I think yesterday he was talking about a roadmap. I think the worry is it's a roadmap to reinfection. That the R rate goes through the bloody roof, and that people, we're only now starting to get ONS stats coming out saying that bus drivers and people that we thought might be safe and who've actually been on the front line, they're getting hammered by this. So we're opening up without really knowing how this has spread through our communities, is spreading through our communities. and may spread in future when we open up again, because I don't think there's been a single country that has relaxed their lockdown where they haven't seen an increase in cases. Most of them have seen an increase, not a huge increase, but they've all seen increases and they've had to react accordingly. Do we really trust Boris Johnson to lead a government that can react accordingly?
No.
They've not shown any possibility, any sense that they have control at any point of this. So
well, I noticed today that Nicola got asked the usual question, you know, excuse me, Miss Sturgeon, but what's the R number? And she again had to explain that it isn't a single number, it's an estimate, therefore it's a spread. And she said today 0.7, between 0.7 and 1 in Scotland. Now, consistently, the number has been between 0.5 and 0.9 in England.
Yeah.
Now, that's awfully close to 1. I don't know, it just seems to be taking a chance, taking a punt on this.
Norrie, it's noticeable how poorly Boris's wee 10-minute pre-record went down last night. I think in the first hour after it, people were a bit shocked about just how poor a performance it was, just how factually lacking it was. But in the hours after that, my God, you could not find anybody on Twitter. Well, you could if you went into the real BAM cases. But avoiding the BAM pots, nobody in the press was defending or talking up what he'd done. They were all, to a man, slating him. And then he's come out this morning, well, his cabinet colleagues have come out this morning, and they've muddied the waters further. He's going to have a huge rabbit out of hat this afternoon in Parliament, or the biggest deed cat that we've seen throughout the entirety of this. Just
they've saved something up.
Sorry?
They'll have saved something up.
Well, GMB this morning with, what's his name, that we all hate but are going to have to put up with because he's been the only guy asking the hard questions.
Piers the Fud Morgan.
That's the man. Do you want to see that?
I do. I missed that this morning.
Okay, here we go. Here's Piers Morgan having a pop at. I can't remember the guy's name, but you'll...
it's the one that looks a wee bit like Mark Francois.
You'll recognize
So can I go and see my two... can I go and see my two sons I haven't seen in 10 weeks? Can I go and see them today and maintain 2 metre distance, yes or no?
As far as I would be concerned, I do not speak for the government. As long as you maintain social distancing in what you do, that will not allow
the problem, Andrew Bridgen. You see, what you've just said is completely against the new rules, as stated. So there you are, a Conservative Member of Parliament who thinks you know exactly what Boris Johnson has been saying, and yet you've just told me to do something I'm not allowed to do. It's the problem, isn't it? There is no clarity. It's a load of old flannel talking about controlling the virus, and you, as a leading, high-profile Conservative politician, haven't got a clue about what these rules actually mean. And you're...
I mean, he's putting in a blinder of a performance, Piers Morgan. He's having a good time at the moment.
But it's really scary. I'm beginning to like what he does.
That's the scary thing. Well, that's because everybody else is missing.
It's also because you'll not get a cabinet minister that will go on Newsnight.
Exactly.
They'll not go on Channel 4 News. They'll not go anywhere near anyone that's going to question them closely. And they think by going on Good Morning Britain, they'll get an easy ride. But Piers Morgan's like, Barry, I can actually look like a journalist for a couple of months.
Didn't you catch Laura Kuenssberg when she turned up late last night, wherever she'd been? Oh, man, she was embarrassing. I'm sorry, shame you haven't got that clip, Norrie. Oh, no. I don't think she even watched it. We're talking about Boris here.
Was this right after the speech?
No, it was a couple of hours afterwards. It was well later on.
Because she did a sycophantic piece.
Well, that will be the piece I'm thinking about.
To camera, where isn't Boris wonderful? It's really difficult decisions he's having to make, and blah blah blah.
Talking about embarrassing pieces, did you either you guys catch Kay Burley, the Sky woman, standing outside number 10 this morning, interviewing?
I've seen a bit on Twitter.
Interviewing the First Minister live with her hair blowing everywhere. I mean, somebody, the producer should have decided well before she was speaking to the First Minister that it should have moved indoors. Anyway, she's interviewing the First Minister. The First Minister is explaining something very important. And Kay Burley turns around and says, "Oh, holy Dominic, whatever, whoever it was." I mean, how rude is it?
I think it was Matt Hancock.
Okay, does it matter who it was?
But the answer to that is, I was expecting somebody to ask the First Minister at a press conference about that. And the perfect answer would have been, well, I don't really blame Kay Burley because government ministers aren't prepared to come into the studio to be asked questions. So they have to doorstep them when the opportunity arises.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing that we're seeing. And it's become acceptable behaviour for government ministers to face no scrutiny. In fact, they actually get quite annoyed when they have to face scrutiny. They act all hurt as if the only scrutiny they should face is parliamentary scrutiny. And they're not facing that at the minute because Parliament's not open. Or if it is, it's a diddy Parliament with about 10% of the MPs in there.
Well, Parliament's their game. They can politic in Parliament. They can avoid the question.
Mm-hmm. We've got Boris in Parliament this afternoon. But, I mean, doing what? Telling lies again?
Well, basically. I mean, he'll waffle. He'll possibly actually change his position. I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised if we get another story from him, because it's been such a guddle. Having to put out A4 long sheets of explanation about what he really meant by stay alert. I mean, it's been a disaster.
You know what? I looked up what an alert was, not ALERT, but LERT, and that I think Jimmy would qualify as alert. Somebody that's hedonistic and enjoys the better things in life.
Cheeky bugger.
Are we discussing haircuts again? Sorry.
No, we're not. We're probably discussing my rum intake, and I think that the viewers didn't need to hear.
Oh, no, I never even mentioned that. But what I'm discussing here is even a mixed message in stay alert, because if you don't see it, right? If you don't see it with a gap, if you look up what alert is, LERT, it's very confusing.
I did mention it yesterday.
If it's on the radio, what's alert?
What was I going to say? Did you see the criticism of Sturgeon's haircut?
Yes.
That was a classic. Last week, maybe even the week before, Nicola's hair was a mess. So she tried to cut it. She eventually did a Zoom meeting with her hairdresser who talked her through how to colour and cut her hair. Right?
Oh, my goodness.
So this was all on Twitter. This was hidden from nobody.
All right.
So, of course, some wag on Twitter, some unionist, decided to do a 2-week-old picture compared to yesterday's picture, saying, oh, she must have been to the hairdressers.
Aye, one rule for them and one rule for us job.
Got bombarded with all the pictures from Twitter of Nicola doing her own hair and the problems she was having and all the rest of it. It was a classic. Gotcha. No, actually, we've got you. You know, it was really funny. I enjoyed that. It's good stuff. Right. Anything else, guys?
Not really, mate. I think
we're
looking at seeing how, as I say, I think Boris needs a bravura performance this afternoon because his press, his right-wing London-based press, sent blood in the water. And if he doesn't do something about that today, he's going to have to give them blood, be it Matt Hancock or whoever.
Well, I'll tell you the other thing that I came across was the second person making the statement that Boris is on the bottle. Now, that's two totally separate sources, both right of centre sources, talking about him having a drink problem. So I don't know if there's something being set up under the wire to move him to the clinic.
If that's even close to being true, that'll be his next sick note. That'll be his next sick note, and he's play for sympathy for the British public. But it might also explain why the 1922 committee have lately been, they've not been coming out and slating him, but they've certainly been going on manoeuvres And possibly that explains why Steve Baker's made a couple of TV performances over the weekend.
He's not been getting complete support, shall we put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unless they've just decided it's only the number 10 team that gets in front of the cameras. I don't know.
Well, I'm not sure, Norrie, because Boris Johnson's track record, as I say, he's never taken responsibility for anything in his entire life. But he was very much unliked by a large number of that parliamentary party until he got himself into the position where he was an absolute shoe-in for leader. And then all of a sudden, they were all huge fans. It wouldn't take much for them to think, you know what, Boris was a risk. We've tried it, and the risk has not worked out. It wouldn't take much for them to move on him.
The problem is they've got to find somebody to replace him, and there's the dearth of talent there.
There is by design, mate. But as I say, maybe that's why Steve Baker didn't take a job in Boris's cabinet. He's quite happy to be the head of the ERG and deputy chairman of the 22 as well, isn't he? He's quite well placed, that man.
We'll see. Stewart, thoughts on Boris?
Oh, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if his government collapsed.
I would. I have to say, I would be.
You think the grey men will walk in first?
I wouldn't be surprised to see a bit more gravitas getting shifted onto the cabinet to support him, because I don't think he's got the gravitas.
The cabinet doesn't have the gravitas. That's the trouble.
No, but
you fill these cabinet with lightweights.
Yeah, and I think possibly the 22 will be suggesting that he needs some real intellect, some heft in there, because it's making the Tories look stupid.
Well, exactly. He's making them look bad, mate. And this whole pandemic has been a worldwide disaster. We can see that. But you've got the governments of Italy laughing at the government of the UK. And I'm sorry, but in our lifetime, Italy has probably been the worst governed nation in Europe, if not the world. They've had certainly 50 or 60 governments, I think it is, since the Second World War. So if they're laughing at you, you're kind of on a right shugly peg at that point.
Well, look, there is a table around, a graph around today that I didn't want to repost on because I couldn't find any evidence where it came from. But it's somebody has calculated from World Health statistics where the worst death rate in the world is, and it's the UK.
Yeah.
By population.
Yeah.
100,000, you know?
Per 100,000 of population is us.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, if nobody else has got anything, I do have a wee present for Stewart.
Okay.
Wee clip to finish off from Yes Minister.
Oh, yes.
Oh, splendid.
So
somebody's going to be brave.
Yeah, only they're not. Here we go, guys.
In stage one, we say nothing is going to happen.
Stage two, we say something may be going to happen, but we should do nothing about it.
In stage three, we say that maybe we should do something about it, but there's nothing we can do.
Stage four, we say maybe there was something we could have done, but it's too late now.
Which I think kind of sums up our view of the present UK government, chaps.
To be honest, mate, if there was a Sir Humphrey in Whitehall actually operating that well, I'd be very, very surprised right now.
Yes, I think they're missing God.
I
Private Patel would have bullied the boy out of his position.
I really don't think. I don't think the civil service is getting a say at the moment. Okay, thanks, guys. Stuart Lockhead, Jimmy Hutton. I'm Norrie Stewart, and we'll no doubt be back tomorrow, chaps. Thanks for watching, listening, and as I say, we'll catch you on Tuesday. Cheers for now.